Okay, hello, and welcome to a new Kerbal Space Program small mini-series part. So, in a few, well, to be exact, yesterday I realized that even though I have a career mode series, I never really go into too much detail to explaining how everything works. So I decided to come up with this mini-series and talk about some general rule of thumb, like the basics, more or less. That's why it's called 101. So to explain some of the very basic concepts so that new players can get a good start and explain a few things. So first of all, we're here in the vehicle assembly building. So in the beginning you will get kind of instructed through the game slightly so that you have command pods, well, in the beginning depends whether you're playing career or sandbox, of course, and how you can build different rockets. So I have built here something for demonstration purposes, of course. So and I'll take this out to the launch pad in just a second, so but you can just click and drag and stick everything together. But I think that is pretty much clear. The other thing that I would like to say on the side is staging is important. So staging is the order in which your parts activate or do their tasks they're supposed to do. Like for example, you can see this one. See, this can't be right. This just can't be right. You fire this decoupler and this one at the same time. That just makes no sense. So you can add a new stage here by clicking this plus or minus buttons, and then you can just take and drag those two in another position. Okay, and then of course launching, that's pretty much clear then. So and then now on to launching. Oh, by the way, before you forget this, that's also one of the main reasons why I decided. Okay, that's actually working. I didn't expect this one to work. I'm sorry. So I have just modded KSP for the first time quite a while. So just don't pay any attention to that. Let's say, can I completely get rid of it? There you go. And there you go. So perfect. So now everything's back to stock. So we have nothing modded here on this now. That was just some more UI. Anyways, what I want to say is there are three types, but let's stick to two types for the moment of important engines. As you can see here, the resource tab, you can see all your resources that you have here, and there are two different types of engines. These two on the side are solid rocket boosters. So they have a solid rocket boosters. That means they are propellant. So their fuel, you can see, where is it? Solid is solid fuel, so it's solid. And we've got liquid fuel, which is liquid. So most of the engines are liquid fueled, so fire liquidish, like use liquid fuel. And the special thing about liquid engines, so if you go under the right click onto a part, we get more kind of different configs and things you can do. So let's say go for activate engine. It is activated even though I haven't used the stage, just to show something. You can see you can throttle this engine. You can see on the bar with your control and shift, and you can control the thrust vectoring, so in which direction you can steer with the help of this engine. That's the thing. And the other thing is solid fuel boosters. You can't toggle like their thrust vector. You can't shut them down, first of all, and second, you can't adjust their thrust level. So it's 100% thrust or 0 thrust. That's it, and they'll burn until they burn out. So I think that's the very most basic thing. So we can now launch the stage and activate our thrust to 100%, or just slightly less, not to waste too much fuel. And then we go into the launch process in itself. In my videos so far, I usually skip over it since I consider this just practice, and you just have to practice this until you get this thing working. So now I'm going to go over two different ways to launch a craft. So the first way, and the most simple way, I guess, is you head up, and if we hit this key, we can slightly accelerate time. So you head up until you're more or less in this part around 10,000 meters, and then you try to pitch with your D key. And now, by the way, now our boosters are depleted, so we're gonna detach them with our spacebar again. So now you're gonna try pitching down towards 45 degrees, more or less ish, and then you're gonna keep the vector, like you're pointing more or less around this time, around this point until your speed vector, that's this one, and by this map mode, so you can until your velocity vector is more or less at the same point, and then you can cut off your engines, or when you reach here around 75 meters. So you can see now we are here at 45 with our speed vector, and our altitude, or apoapsis altitude, is also around 75 meters. So we're going to cut our engines, so completely shut them down. Now we won't do anything, we just wait until we're at apoapsis. Speaking of apoapsis, I think I should disable, by the way, everything else so that we are not confused at all. So yeah, there you go. So apoapsis, that's the highest point above a surface in which sphere of influence you are at the moment. So since we are launching from Kerbin, we are still pretty close to Kerbin. We're here at the Kerbin apoapsis. There you go. So sphere of influence is more or less where the gravity well of this body is, the most important gravity well, and that's about like where you are orbiting. And on this side note, we are at the moment in a suborbital trajectory. That means we have only an apoapsis. So there are two other types of kind of trajectories, orbital and hyperbolic, but I will speak about those in, well, at least orbital trajectory in just a couple of minutes, one or two at max, and hyperbolic in a future video probably. So now we coasted up to the apoapsis, and now we're gonna have more or less flatten out our trajectory and burn at full thrust. And we need to burn here at full thrust in order to increase our orbital velocity. So that's this velocity marker down here. I will talk about different velocities in just a moment once we reach orbit. And orbit is, for those who don't know, but probably most of you know, so first next stage separation, but most of you know, is you go fast enough so that around the body, so that you're falling constantly down, but with your horizontal velocity you kind of coast along the surface so that you never actually fall down. So now we're in orbit, more or less. Let's go make it a little bit better. So there you go, 70, 80. Okay, that's decent. That's not perfect, but decent. Okay, so now we're in orbit. So we have a apoapsis, as we had, that's the highest point, and we have a periapsis, the lowest point of our trajectory. And if we now time accelerate, we're just going to go around this body, and as I said, we're flying this fast parallel to the surface and getting pulled in towards the surface by the gravity, and that's why we're going around the body. So in physics, if you had physics, this makes more sense than just like blabbering this around here. So as you can see, we're just flying around here. So now the next thing, or the more or less even the last thing I'm interested in talking about in this first episode, is the velocity and the different like period and retrograde. So first of all, let's stop time acceleration here and have a look at our lovely craft here. So there we go. We are moving, if we have a look like this without the HUD, we're moving from the left side to the right of the screen compared to the planet. So if we head on the screen, we're flying in towards the right side, and this kind of also shows us, like, now is important in terms of the velocity vector. We have here this one without the cross is our prograde. That means if we point towards this side, we are exactly pointing towards the direction where we are moving at. So then we have, of course, retrograde. That's the other important thing. That's more or less backwards, and with those two markers we can use them to either slow down, we're slowing down, you see the speed going down, or accelerate, which would be again the other way around. So accelerate again to 2,300 meters per second. And the other thing in which comparison you are moving is, now we are moving compared to orbital velocity. That is measured from the central, or from the center of the body we're talking about. So we are now moving with 2,306.9 meters per second compared to the center of Kerbin. If we go into click once, we can get the surface velocity. This is now compared to 2,111 meters per second compared to the surface, so compared to the ground of the planet, because the planet rotates as well, we're moving slightly slower. That's also why we're flying in this direction, so that we get this extra boost from the surface spin. Makes it more efficient. So that's more or less now the most important thing. Well, there you go. Most important things that I wanted to talk to you in the very first episode. And Oh yeah, one last thing I completely forgot, and that's if you accelerate in orbit. Yeah, that's also pretty important. So if you accelerate in orbit, you're not going to get faster flying straight there. You're just going to, as you can see now, increase your kind of orbit. So on the opposite side of the planet, the highest point, so the apoapsis, will go further away, and thus your orbit will be longer. So the time it takes you to go once around. So the closer you are, the faster you go around the planet. If you go into a wide orbit, like for example the moon here, it takes quite a while until it goes one time, like one full rotation around it. Yeah, that's also, and if you're slowing down, that's exactly the opposite. And to land now, we would have to slow ourselves down until we have some no periapsis, for example. That would be pretty much you're going to land onto the on the surface of the planet. Okay, so that's for the first, I guess, yeah, for the first episode. So I think you've learned something, and if not, then maybe you will learn something in the next episode. Until then, Spaceship signing out.